at the kitchen table, gluing popsicle sticks together with Jerry in what could only be described as the most mediocre attempt at an arts and crafts project ever conceived. Sighing, I glanced at the clock. Can we just call it done already, Dad? I've got places to be. Jerry frowned, carefully placing another stick onto their rickety creation. Morty, we can't rush art. This is for your science project, and it needs to be perfect. Before Morty could argue, Summer walked in, holding her phone in one hand and a coffee mug in the other. Hey Dad, can you give me a ride to my new job? It's at this weird antique shop downtown. I blinked at her question, preparing to lead the conversation in my desired outcome. Wait, what? You're working at Needful Things. Summer rolled her eyes. Yeah, whatever it's called. It looks kind of creepy, but he's paying me, so whatever. Can you give me a ride or not? Jerry piped up before Morty could respond. Sorry, Summer, but we're busy with his project. Summer groaned. Dad, come on. I'll take you, Rick announced as he shuffled into the kitchen, a flask in hand. He burped, wiping his mouth. I need to stretch the old portal gun anyway. Summer raised an eyebrow but shrugged. All right, fine. Let's go. Rick opened the portal and they both stepped through. As they left, I looked back to Jerry, ready to leave to begin my plans. Can we just finish this already? Almost, Jerry said, holding up the flimsy structure like it was a masterpiece. But where's Pluto? Morty groaned. Pluto isn't a planet. Jerry looked a bit confused, but then a condescending expression grew on his face and he crossed his arms. Yes, it is. I head upstairs, not wanting to waste time debating. Entering my code to my room, I began making my way to the table that held my ship. This is the perfect chance, I muttered to myself. Within minutes, the ship was ready, and I was heading toward the antique shop, my mind flipping through how I could leverage the situation to my advantage. Landing my ship a few blocks away, I managed to see Rick and Summer in the shop with my teacher Mr. Goldenfold walking out with a bunch of women looking overly confident. I walked and entered the shop, looking around as Rick was doing the same. Rick's voice broke at that moment. Summer, put that crap down. That microscope's just gonna make your DNA look more interesting while it slowly rewrites your genome. Trust me, you don't want that. Summer scoffed but set the microscope back down. Rick and Summer began bickering, and the devil's grin faltered as Rick's scrutiny intensified. This was my moment. While Rick started pulling items off shelves and ranting about the devil's tricks, I slipped further into the shop, scanning the shelves for artifacts I knew could be useful. My eyes locked onto a gilded dagger, an ornate mirror, and a small music box, all artifacts I recognized from the show, each powerful but with deadly consequences if used unwisely. I reached for the mirror first, its surface rippling like liquid silver. Then the music box, which hummed softly in my hand. As I moved, I kept an ear on the escalating chaos between Rick and Mr. Needful. Rick's accusations grew louder, and the devil's protests more desperate. Standing, I hovered above the edge of the table, flipping a gilded dagger in his hand, the glint of the blade catching the dim light of the antique shop. Around me were shelves brimming with cursed trinkets, each one humming with latent energy. The air reeked of false promises and desperation. It was exactly the kind of place that screamed bad news in the show. But the worse the outcome, the stronger its potential. I used the distraction to slip the items into my bag. Rick's outburst had drawn everyone's attention, leaving me free to grab what I needed without anyone noticing. The devil shot me a glance but was too preoccupied with Rick's tirade to intervene, not that he really needed to since the items did the job just fine. As Summer began pushing Rick outside the shop with the microscope in his hand, the devil turned his attention to Morty, his charming, oily smile plastered across his face. Young man, can I interest you in something? Perhaps a talisman to boost your confidence. A little something too. Even the odds. Morty's grin widened. Nah, I'm good, actually. That caught the devil off guard. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second before he recovered. Really? Intriguing. Go on your way then. I headed to the door, passing Summer, who was looking at me like I teleported there. The devil's eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing, letting Morty continue on his way. The devil leaned forward, his interest piqued. But Rick and his antics were still lingering in his mind. Back in my room, I unloaded the items carefully onto my desk, each one pulsing faintly with the unmistakable aura of bad decisions waiting to happen. The mirror, the music box, and the dagger lay side by side, seemingly inert. But I knew better, these were as dangerous as any of Rick's experiments, if not more so. This is where my real plan came into play. From a hidden compartment under my desk, I pressed the vibrant red button on my wrist. The Meeseeks formed with a faint pop before me. I handed it a pair of clothes and now it was wearing a trench coat and sunglasses. Its usual chirpy tone was dampened to a whisper as it looked at me and said, "I'm Mr. Meeseeks, look at me, but keep it on the down low, okay?" I blinked. "Alright, here's the deal. These artifacts, they're cursed. I need you to neutralize the unpleasant spell without messing up the useful parts. Think you can do that?" The Meeseeks nodded, adjusting its shades like some kind of paranormal fixer. Existence is pain, but fixing cursed objects, that's my jam. Outside the shop, Rick and I stood in the street, looking up and down the block. "You know what, Morty? Screw that guy. We're setting up shop right here." "What?" I blinked, stepping back as Rick pulled out his portal gun and fired it at a vacant storefront across the street. A glowing green gateway opened, and he strode through without hesitation. I followed behind. Inside, the space was bare, but that didn't stop Rick. He pulled out a handful of gadgets and began assembling what looked like a high-tech version of a flea market booth. "We're gonna out needful. No curses, no tricks, just pure, unadulterated scientific countermeasures." Summer, who'd seen the two of us, suddenly entered from the still open portal, crossing her arms. "What do you think you're doing?" Rick ignored her, focused on his task. You're the face of the operation." Rick handed me a lab coat and a clipboard. "Congratulations, you're now the manager of Curse Purge Plus." Within an hour, the storefront was buzzing. Customers began trickling in, lured by a sign Rick had projected onto the building, "Cursed. We can fix that. Satisfaction guaranteed." Inside, shelves lined with neutralized artifacts gleamed under fluorescent lights. Rick had even set up a device that would detect and remove curses on the spot, offering instant results. The first customer was Mr. Goldenfold, surrounded by women, clutching a cursed typewriter. "It's ruining my life," he blurted. "Can you fix it?" Rick smirked, running the typewriter through his machine. In seconds, it emerged curse-free. Boom. Problem solved. Next. From my spot behind the counter, I watched as Rick's operation quickly overshadowed Mr. Needful's. The devil himself stood outside his shop, glaring across the street, his smug smile replaced with barely concealed rage. Rick noticed and gave him a mocking wave. "What's the matter, Needful? Can't handle a little competition?" A crowd began to gather, laughing and taking pictures, while Mr. Needful stood fuming in his doorway. Rick shouted through a megaphone, "Hey, Needful. Your cursed junk can't compete with cold, hard science. Suck it." The distraction was enough for the Meeseeks to slip in and out of the shop unnoticed, the bag he was holding now holding Curse's neutralized weapons. I stood focused on the escaping Meeseeks, my wrist glowing with newfound dopamine-enhanced thoughts. It's time to put those objects to use. When I came back, escaping the feud between the two, I immediately went into Rick's garage, collecting a few items on my way. Entering, there stood the Meeseeks' clothing lying on the floor and a bag of good. I chose to work here in order to test the purified goods, since Rick's ship had safety measures that prevent anything from happening if something went wrong. First up was the gilded dagger. Originally, it supposedly gave its wielder immense strength, but at the cost of their sanity. Now, stripped of its curse, it was just a sleek, wickedly sharp blade. I held it up, admiring the craftsmanship. "Okay," I muttered, glancing at a makeshift target I'd set up. A pile of Jerry's old exercise equipment gathering dust in the corner. With a deep breath, I lunged forward and slashed at the target. The dagger cut through the dumbbells like they were made of butter. I was left stunned by its power. Whoa, okay, this thing's awesome. I needed to check if this strength enhancement only applied to the metal or if the entirety of the blade was necessary, but I could test that later. Next, I turned my attention to the ornate mirror. It had originally trapped anyone who looked into it in a twisted reflection of their worst fears. Now, it just reflected. Or so I thought. I stood in front of it, waiting for something to happen. "Come on," I muttered. "Show me something useful." The mirror shimmered. Slowly, an image appeared, not my reflection, but an overlay of glowing symbols and lines, almost like a heads-up display. A map of the room formed on its surface, with a glowing red dot where I stood. It's a tracker, I said, tilting my head. The image shifted to follow my movements. No, it's more than that. The mirror began showing details, heat signatures, structural weaknesses in the walls, even a faint outline of Jerry sneaking around downstairs. I smirked. Oh, yeah, this can stay. Then there was the 3 monkey paw chains. I vividly remembered Saturn using this in canon, each one granting a wish but in return makes them have brutal consequences. With the elimination of the curse it was clear what it did and the power of it consumed my entire thoughts. Refocusing, I turned my head towards the music box. It had once cursed anyone who listened to its haunting tune to dance uncontrollably until they dropped dead. Neutralized, it now produced a soft, soothing melody that seemed to fill the air with a tangible calm. I wound it up and set it on the desk, watching as the tiny figurine inside spun. The room immediately felt lighter, like a weight I didn't know I was carrying had been lifted. Even the faint buzzing of anxiety that came from seeing myself dead had completely vanished, as if it was never there. Okay, I said, leaning back in my chair. This thing's kinda nice. I closed my eyes, letting the music wash over me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like the world was on the verge of collapsing. But I also thought of its uses and potential when facing threats stronger than myself. I was so absorbed in my experiments that I didn't hear Summer enter into the garage until she was standing right behind me. "What the hell is all this?" she asked, making me jump. I quickly slammed the music box shut. "Nothing. Just some stuff I'm working on." She raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms. "Uh-huh. And why does it look like you robbed my boss's shop?" I sighed. "Look, these were cursed, and he's giving them away, okay. But they're neutralized now. I'm sure he doesn't mind. And well, they're actually kinda useful." Summer picked up the dagger, testing its weight. "Useful, huh? Like this thing?" I nodded. "Yeah, but be careful. It's..." Before I could finish, she swung it at a stack of old magazines, slicing through them effortlessly. Her eyes widened. "Okay, that's kinda badass." I shook my head but smirked anyways. "Told you." Her attention shifted to the mirror. "What's this one do?" I shrugged. "It's like a scanner or something. Shows heat signatures, weaknesses. Stuff like that." Summer leaned in, studying her reflection. "Huh, not bad, Morty. Maybe you're not as lame as I thought." "Gee, thanks," I muttered, rolling my eyes. Before Summer and I could experiment further, another interruption came. Rick barged into the room. "What's this? A secret little clubhouse meeting?" I froze. No. Just working on some stuff." Rick's eyes scanned the room, landing on the dagger, the mirror, and the music box. He let out a low whistle. Well, look who's playing with fire." Rick snorted. "Let's see what you got there." "Not much," I insisted. Rick leaned in, grabbing the music box. "We'll see about that." He flipped it open, and the melody began to play. His face softened for a moment before he slammed it shut. "Huh, not bad," he admitted. "But don't think I'm not keeping an eye on this, Morty. One slip up with these, and I'm chucking all this crap into a black hole." After Rick left, Summer turned to me. "You think he's right? The side effects could still be there." I hesitated. "Maybe. But I think I can handle it. I mean, these things were cursed before, and now they're kinda amazing. It's worth the risk." Summer smirked, flipping the dagger in her hand and placing it back on the table. "All right, Morty. Just don't screw it up. Otherwise, you'll have to deal with Rick and me." As she disappeared from view, I turned back to the objects, my thoughts tangled with their potential. Neutralizing their curses hadn't just stripped away their dangers, it had transformed them into tools. Tools I could wield, or that might one day be wielded against me. Rick's warning echoed in my mind: power always comes at a cost, and greedy people always came. But I told myself I was different. With my future knowledge, I knew I just had to ensure that, when the bill came due, it wasn't mine to pay. Morty Smith. Abilities. N.A. Wealth. Blemfjark Galactic Credits. Current amount *52,000. Business income. Cost per 10 crates, 867. Selling amount, 2,300. Intergalactic tax, 2%. Net per 2 weeks, 28,660. Inventions items. Snuffles collar. This item has the ability to enhance the user's comprehension, learning and thought capacity. With upgrades includes it possess the ability to summon a reconditioned Meeseeks. Laser-based weapons. Each weapon, pistol, automatic, and grenade has the capability to fire plasma-based shots that go at a top speed of 2,500 miles per hour, 700 miles faster than a regular bullet or 3x the speed of sound. Freeze ray. Manipulation of temperature at a molecular level. The device may emit a concentrated beam of ultra-cold air or a special energy wave that rapidly lowers the temperature of the target. Effects. Upon contact, the freeze ray can instantly lower the temperature of the target, causing ice to form, freezing surfaces solid, or even immobilizing enemies. Mirror tracker. Sweeps the nearby area of any living being and immediately identifies weaknesses within its scope. Dagger. A finely crafted weapon that gleams with an enchanting aura. Grant the person wielding it a surge of strength coursing through their veins. The dagger infuses its bearer with enhanced power, increasing their physical capabilities and resilience during combat. With each successful strike, the wielder feels more invigorated, almost as if the dagger feeds off the energy of their will and determination. Monkey paw. Grants the user 3 wishes. The stronger the wish, the weaker the effects. Music box. When the lid is lifted, a gentle, soothing melody begins to play. Each note cascades like a gentle breeze, wrapping around the listener like a soft embrace. As the soothing melody fills the air, the music box may also gently sway any form of negative emotion towards a person. Lower grade Meeseeks box. Summons foot soldier like Meeseek who have only the intent to harm a foe. Weakness. It doesn't have any survival instinct of its own. Personal ship. Elongated vessel, approximately 300 meters in length. Its exterior is composed of a shimmering alloy. Powered by a dual-core quantum drive, the Nebula Voyager can achieve faster-than-light travel through a warp bubble manipulation system. This advanced propulsion technology allows for navigation through wormholes, making interstellar travel efficient and relatively safe. The ship also features an advanced ion propulsion system for sublight speeds, ideal for delicate maneuvers around planets and during planetary landings. Doesn't currently have any weapons equipped. Meeseeks ships. A classic shuttle carrier that allows for a lot of space to carry crates and people. The garage was quiet again after Summer's departure and Rick's grumbled warnings. The silence felt heavier now, not from the absence of sound but from the weight of possibilities. I stared at the dagger on the workbench, its sleek blade gleaming under the beaming lights. It wasn't enough. The mirror, the music box, even the dagger, all these tools were remarkable, but none gave me what I truly needed. The strength to stand on my own. Rick wasn't wrong about the cost of power, but he didn't understand. If I didn't act now, someone else would. Or worse, I'd lose what little edge I had. I could find other things to do once I'm standing in the face of danger without fear of death. My gaze dropped to the thin collar on my wrist, a relic of the countless insane adventures I'd survived. It had been both a shackle and a shield, giving me just enough to survive while reminding me of my limits. I needed to evolve, just like it. In this short while I figured out the gilded dagger's metal was the key. It had already been imbued with immense strength. Doing a basic calculation in my head, I estimated its output at around 78,000 pounds of force, just enough to slice through steel with ease. This would grant me around 99x my usual maximum force. If I could reforge it into a new casing for my wrist collar, I'd have a permanent upgrade. But reforging cursed, or formerly cursed, materials based on strength wasn't something you could do with a blowtorch and pliers. I needed a smith. Not just any smith, a galactic smith, one capable of working with metals infused with eldritch properties. The problem: most forges capable of handling exotic metals like this existed in distant corners of the galaxy, run by eccentric smiths with questionable morals. I packed the dagger, the mirror, and one of the 2 monkey paws into my bag. The paws were still a mystery to me. I had been hard to come up with an ability that wouldn't be diminished due to how powerful it was. I'd used one already. My wish had been simple yet paradoxical: reform the paw at the exact moment of my wish. I wondered why I still only had 2 left, but I didn't dwell on it, knowing I could merely use the other 2 with almost zero consequence. Now in my ship and heading on this short journey, I immediately made a new wish: for my life to restart after my mental death. Why mental death? Because physical death wasn't really death. I'd imagined scenarios where I'd have to pretend to be dead, or even that physical death would immediately activate due to my natural body continuously dying and resurrecting. The paw had granted the wish with no apparent besides the visible destruction of it and one forming in its place, but I didn't trust it. It was much smaller than before, as if it was reformed through the crumbs of the other. It bothered me, but for now, though, it stayed tucked away. I took my ship. Having the blueprints of Rick's allowed me to easily introduce I that would guide me through the universe. But the galaxy was vast, and finding the right smith was like searching for a needle in a haystack made of black holes. The journey stretched for longer than I'd anticipated. I bartered information, scavenged tech, and evaded more than one angry alien warlord. Finally, I found her, Tysarid, a smith whose name was whispered in the corners of the galactic underworld. Tysarid's forge was hidden on a volcanic moon, the air heavy with ash and the ground glowing with rivers of molten rock. Her workshop was carved into the side of a cliff, a fortress of metal and fire. When I showed her the dagger, she raised an eyebrow, her reptilian scales catching the glow of the forge. "You want me to destroy this?" "No," I said, holding up the collar on my wrist. "I want you to make this better." She studied me for a long moment before nodding. "It'll cost you. Name your price." Her grin was sharp. "You." I balked. "What?" "Not you, you. Your will. A piece of it. Call it collateral. If you're asking me to forge something this dangerous, I need assurance it won't backfire. Your will ensures it's yours and no one else's." I hesitated but eventually agreed. The process was brutal. The dagger's metal had to be heated to temperatures that would vaporize most materials, temperatures Tysarid achieved using molten plasma from the moon's core. It glowed brighter than any star I'd seen, radiating an intense energy that made my skin crawl even from the atmosphere. Tysarid worked with precision, her claws moving over the metal with an artistry that defied logic. The blade was melted down, its essence transferred into the collar's new casing. As she worked, she chanted in a language I couldn't understand, binding the metal's strength to my intent, my will. When it was done, the collar was reborn. Charcoal black and sleek, reinforced, and humming with raw energy, it felt alive. "Try it," Tysarid said, stepping back. I hesitated, then slid it onto my wrist. The power hit me like a freight train. My muscles tightened, my vision sharpened, and my mind cleared. Every part of me felt enhanced, as though I'd leveled up in ways I couldn't even comprehend. But there was something else, a faint hum in the back of my mind, like a whisper. "What's that?" I asked, pointing to my head slightly tense. Tysarid shrugged. "A side effect, perhaps. Or maybe it's just you hearing yourself for the first time." This development made me slightly nervous, but I didn't mind it too much. If whatever was in my head became a threat, I could always wish it out of existence. When I returned through my secret entrance, the room was quiet when I stepped back. For a moment, I allowed myself to relax, feeling the weight of the upgraded collar around my wrist. Then the air shimmered. Portals opened in quick succession, and figures in council uniforms stepped through. "Freeze, Rick C-137. One of them barked, weapons raised. Rick's voice boomed from outside my door. "Likely getting arrested currently, goddamn council of Ricks. What do you?" Before he could finish, a canister hit my floor. Knockout gas. Shit. I woke up in the cold, sterile confines of an interrogation room. The limpness of my body weighed me down, forcing me to look at the cuffs tightly forming around my joints. My collar was gone, leaving my wrist bare and vulnerable. This was bad. I thought, knowing nothing good would occur without it, and the hard fact that I've once more been dragged into a situation completely unprepared. Across from me sat a soldier Rick, glaring at me with the same suspicion they usually reserved for people with a bigger ego than them. Rick's voice was muffled, coming from another room. It sounded like an argument, likely over the accusations of Rick C-137 killing 27 other Ricks and their Mortys. This Morty, the soldier Rick began, is your average Morty but has suspicious behavior, doesn't match the profile. And was wearing a dangerous device on his wrist. What's going on? Ah geez, where's my Rick? I said, prepared to give the convincing speech of every Morty, causing my voice to crack with nervousness. It wasn't hard, months of pretending to be a typical Morty had honed my act. But unfortunately the act didn't work as well as I'd hoped. The interrogation dragged on. They asked questions I'd never reveal as I'd put myself at risk and droned for hours until a call was made. Bring the Morty, we're headed to the council, was all I heard from what looked to be a walkie-talkie. Moments later, the door burst open, and two more Ricks dragged both me and Rick C-137 out of our separated rooms. Rick looked pissed but strangely calm as we were herded into a larger chamber, the Council of Rick's main hall. The room buzzed with activity, holograms flickering as the Ricks argued amongst themselves. The council head stepped forward, glaring at my Rick. C-137, your actions continue to jeopardize the stability of the multiverse. And now you're Morty. Blah, 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 spare me the speech. You guys just love using me as your scapegoat. Rick interrupted. Before the argument could escalate, I had noticed something about the soldier Ricks. Rick seemingly caught my glance and nodded slightly, his hand moving subtly toward one of the guards standing beside them. He didn't have his portal gun anymore, but there was an abandoned one sitting in a holster nearby. Enough of this, the head Rick barked. Take them to holding. Before he could finish, Rick lunged forward, snatching the portal gun from the holster. With practiced ease, he fired it, creating a swirling green vortex. Grabbing my arm, he yelled, "Run, Morty!" We dove through the portal just as chaos erupted behind us. The council guards opened fire, and alarms blared through the citadel. On the other side of the portal, we landed in a narrow corridor, but there was no time to catch our breath. Another portal opened behind us, and more Ricks poured through. Keep moving, Rick yelled, firing the stolen gun to open another escape route. We're not stopping, till we lose these assholes. The chase led us through dimension after dimension, an ocean world full of shit, a desert wasteland, a bizarre plane where everything was made of candy. The council's forces were relentless, their pursuit unyielding. The Rick soldiers were right on our tails, firing their plasma weapons anytime they had the chance. Several beams shot by my head but none hit. It was almost like I had a sixth sense. Before the weapons even fired, I knew where to move my head just in time to dodge the supersonic attacks. As we hid behind a giant candy tree, Rick opened 8 portals almost simultaneously, and we jumped through one immediately in order to loose their unabated trail, and somehow we managed to loose them. Finally, in a moment of relative calm, we ducked into an abandoned bunker in the post-apocalyptic world we found ourselves surrounded by. Rick worked quickly, setting traps and recalibrating the stolen portal gun. I couldn't help but be aware of the way he glanced at me, like he wasn't sure if he could trust me. You've been quiet, Morty, he said, breaking the silence. Almost too quiet. I hesitated, then met his gaze. Just trying to survive, Rick. Like always, I said, rubbing the back of my head. He didn't look convinced. You sure about that? Because the council seems real interested in you. And don't think I haven't seen you sneaking into my lab. What are you up to? I shrugged, trying to play it off. Well, maybe I'm just tired of being the dumb Morty. Rick's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, the bunker shook. The council had found us somehow. Guess we'll have to finish this heart-to-heart later, Rick said, grabbing the portal gun. Let's move. As we fled once more, I couldn't shake the feeling that Rick's suspicions were growing at an alarming rate and that my secrets were becoming harder to keep. The chase was no longer in my thought or about escaping the council anymore. It was about staying one step ahead of Rick's questions, and the answers I wasn't prepared to give. I need my collar back so I can sort this out. The bunker trembled again, dust shaking from the ceiling as the distant sound of plasma fire rang out in the ruined cityscape above. Rick gritted his teeth, finishing the last adjustment to the stolen portal gun while I kept watch near the entrance. My heart pounded, partly from the chase, partly from the weight of the secret I had no choice but to keep. They don't give up, do they? I muttered, peering through a crack in the bunker's rusted metal door. Yeah, well, I have that effect on people, Rick grumbled, snapping the gun shut. Alright, Morty, we're getting out of here. I just need to input the right coordinates in. A loud explosion rocked the bunker. The door bent inward, groaning under pressure. Rick grabbed my arm, pulling me back just as a plasma bolt sizzled through the air where my head had just been. Ah, geez, I yelped, stumbling as Rick fired up the portal gun. A fresh green portal burst open against the bunker wall. Go. Rick shoved me toward it, already pulling his pistol from his coat. I'll cover you. Before I could argue, another blast erupted through the door, sending metal shards flying. The force knocked us both to the ground. I barely had time to look up before I saw them, the Citadel Ricks, swarming in like a plague. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy, their faces impassive. One of them stepped forward, a high-ranking Rick by the looks of it, with a thick beard and a jagged scar down his left cheek. His portal gun gleamed at his hip. C-137, the scarred Rick sneered. You really thought you could run forever. Rick wiped blood from his chin, giving him an unimpressed look. Well, considering it took you dumbasses this long to find me, yeah. Kinda did. The Citadel Ricks aimed their weapons. I could feel my pulse hammering in my ears. I wasn't ready to go down like this. Not without my collar. Not without a fight. Before they could fire, I acted on instinct. Ducking low, I lunged for the nearest soldier, slipping through his grip and snatching his portal gun right off his belt. Morty, what the hell are you? Rick started, but I didn't have time to explain. I fired the gun at the ceiling. A new portal crackled open, destabilizing the already weak structure of the bunker. The roof caved in with a deafening crash, sending debris and dust in every direction. Move, I shouted, grabbing Rick and dragging him through the fresh portal before the Citadel Ricks could regroup. We landed hard on cold, polished floors. The air around us was sterile, the lighting artificial and humming. The Citadel. Ah, Morty, are you an idiot? Rick groaned, picking himself up. You just jumped us straight into the snake pit. I didn't have a choice. I shot back, scanning the area. It was quiet, too quiet. But I recognized this section of the Citadel. I knew exactly where we needed to go. Rick dusted himself off, looking at me with suspicion again. Morty, you knew where to aim that thing. I hesitated. I couldn't let him know. Not yet. Lucky guess, I mumbled. Let's just get out of here. Rick narrowed his eyes but didn't push. Instead, he yanked me forward, ducking behind a row of lockers as a group of soldiers passed by. My heart pounded, but I forced myself to stay focused. I had one goal: get my collar back. Navigating the Citadel was easier than I expected. Maybe it was because I had seen it before. Maybe it was something more. Either way, every hallway, every turn felt familiar. And eventually, we made it to the containment wing. The room was lined with confiscated tech, all neatly categorized in glowing display cases. And there it was, my collar, sitting in one of the secured cases, its shiny metallic surface reflecting the dim blue light of the room. Rick was already scanning the area, checking for security. All right, Morty, grab your weird little wristwatch or whatever and let's get out of here before. Freeze. We spun around. A squad of Citadel guards stood at the entrance, weapons raised. Damn it, Rick growled. Every damn time. The guards stepped forward. One of them grabbed my arm, yanking me back. My chest tightened. I couldn't fail now, I needed that collar. Thinking fast, I kicked back, slamming my heel into the guard's knee. He stumbled, giving me just enough time to break free and lunge toward the display case. Rick fired at the remaining guards, his shots precise and ruthless. I smashed my elbow into the glass, ignoring the sharp sting as shards cut my skin, and grabbed the collar. The moment my fingers closed around it, a surge of familiarity rushed through me. The weight of it, the cold metal, it was like reconnecting with an old part of myself. Thoughts flooded into my mind and one stood out: I'd need to investigate this collar once more. I snapped it back onto my wrist just as Rick tossed me a fresh portal gun from one of the confiscated weapons racks. Time to go, Morty. He barked. We dove through the next portal, barely evading another round of plasma blasts. The world shifted around us, and suddenly, we were standing in the lower industrial sector of the Citadel, the maintenance tunnels, a maze of pipes, vents, and metal walkways. And we weren't alone. Still being chased, he grumbled. With a few quick taps searching for dumb brainwaves instead of his own, he found the perpetrator, and in just a few moments a couple of planets pulled up. A high-pitched whine filled the air and Rick landed on the planet of Trans. A green solid planet that has just enough oxygen to breathe on. Oh, shit, I muttered, seeing portals opening behind us. Rick quickly looked back and grimaced. Yeah, evil Rick, let's go. Rick wasted no time, setting new coordinates. The portal gun whirled to life and we were in before they could even fire back. We landed in a wasteland ready for what was to come. The wasteland stretched before us, barren and broken, the air thick with an acrid stench. The dome in the distance loomed like a scar on the ruined landscape, its metal frame rusted and reinforced with crude patches. The faintest screams echoed from within, barely audible over the gusts of wind that kicked up dust around us. Rick exhaled sharply, adjusting his portal gun. There he is, he muttered. Bastard thought he could hide. Guess what? Nobody hides from me. My fingers tightening around my collar. So, what's the plan? We just bust in there. Rick smirked, his eyes gleaming with something between anticipation and annoyance. Damn right we do. He pulled out his pistol, checking the charge. Keep your head down, Morty. And don't touch anything weird. We moved quickly, keeping to the jagged remains of collapsed buildings for cover. As we neared the dome, automated turrets whirred to life, scanning the perimeter. Rick rolled his eyes, casually pulling a small device from his pocket and pressing a button. The turrets sparked violently before deactivating. Wow, I muttered. That was easy. Rick scoffed. You think a guy like evil Rick expects visitors? He's paranoid as hell. Guy probably forgot to change the default security codes. The front entrance slid open with a mechanical hiss, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor lined with flickering monitors. Each screen displayed a different Morty, some in cages, some strapped to machines, their faces twisted in expressions of agony or vacant resignation. My eyes squinted, showing a bit of hesitation. Rick. This is. Yeah, I know, he said, voice uncharacteristically tense. Just keep moving. At the far end of the corridor, a figure stood waiting. Evil Rick. He looked just like my Rick, but there was something off about him, something colder. His grin was sharp, cruel, his eyes devoid of anything close to remorse. And, maybe a bit of mascara. Well, evil Rick drawled, spreading his arms. C-137, you just don't know when to quit, do you? Rick scowled. Oh, I quit all the time. Just not today. Evil Rick chuckled, tapping a few buttons on his wrist console. From the walls, mechanical arms shot out, grabbing Rick before he could react. Before I could move, a pair of arms wrapped around me too, yanking me upward. Damn it, Rick grunted, struggling against his restraints. Really? Bondage traps. That's the best you got. Evil Rick smirked. I find they're pretty effective. You know, you never should have searched for me like that. C-137. That was sloppy. Sent you straight back to my own mess, gave me just enough time to prepare for this moment. Rick scoffed. This whole setup. It's amateur. It's desperate. You're hoarding Mortys like some kind of lunatic instead of actually being smart about it. Evil Rick's smirk faltered. You're one to talk. You lost your citadel, lost your place at the top. Face it, you're nothing now. Rick grinned. Yeah, then why are you scared? Before evil Rick could react, my Rick twisted his wrist, activating something on his own. It was his pistol on max settings. A pulse of blue energy shot through the room, and suddenly, the restraints shattered. Evil Rick's eyes widened. What? Rick didn't wait for him to finish. He lunged, fist connecting with evil Rick's jaw, sending him sprawling. I dropped to the ground, shaking off the last of my own restraints, and grabbed one of the weapons scattered around. Evil Rick groaned, pushing himself up. You. Rick aimed his portal gun at the ceiling and fired. A swirling portal opened up, revealing the vast void of space. You talk too much, Rick muttered, before kicking evil Rick straight into the portal. I barely caught a glimpse of where he was headed before the portal snapped shut. The Citadel Council room. Whatever happened to him there? He wasn't coming back from it. With the threat neutralized, we turned to the Mortys still trapped in the walls. I helped free as many as I could while Rick contacted the Citadel, sending them the proof they needed to clear his name. Within minutes, retrieval teams arrived, rounding up the surviving Mortys and dismantling the remains of evil Rick's base. As the chaos settled, I stepped away from the crowd, needing a moment to breathe. That's when I saw him. A Morty, standing at the edge of the crowd, staring at the wreckage. He wore an eye patch, his expression unreadable. Something about him sent a chill down my spine. He looked at me, just for a moment, and then turned, disappearing into the masses without a word. I wanted to call out. But I didn't. Something told me this wasn't the right time. Is it a good idea to get rid of him as an unknown variable or keep him as a hidden backup? I contemplated until someone interrupted. Rick clapped a hand on my shoulder. Come on, Morty, we're done here. I nodded, shaking out of my daze unsettled, and followed him through the last portal home. I stand on the observation deck of my weapons manufacturing planet, Morty Arms. A planet I've carved out from nothing, built on the foundation of efficient meseeks and laser-focused ambition. The operations are running smoothly, at least for now, with meseeks workers handling everything from assembly lines to quality control. I've upgraded their boxes to minimize errors, even downgraded some of the functions to make sure they're not too erratic. I need precision. After our slight scuffle with the Citadel, Rick and I's partnership hasn't gotten any better. In fact, it declined. He was still suspicious of my supposed sudden intelligence gain, and I hadn't necessarily made it better by sharing his guardedness. I'd need to figure out how to deal with that soon. Shifting focus back, 1,000 meseeks rush around the industrial zone below, assembling weapons, packaging ammo, testing gadgets, all of it seamless, all of it mine. Every single weapon that leaves this planet will be under my watchful eye. I've got to make sure the product is top-notch, but not too much so no one can mess with my business empire. I'm practically swimming in credits and floorbots, my arms trade booming, but I'm not satisfied. Not yet. There's always something to improve, always something to optimize. I can see it in my mind. This place could be even more efficient, more secure, but right now, I've gotta keep my cool. Rick's getting suspicious. His sharp eyes have been following me a little too closely lately, and I can't afford to slip up. The last thing I need is him poking around Morty Arms. I lean over the balcony and gaze down at the sprawling production plant below. I'm surrounded by factories and meseeks labor camps. Their boxes hum with the low frequency of focused work, doing what they were created to do, helping me expand my business. But the boxes I handed the meseeks are even weaker than they used to be. After a less than pleasant experience with a customer who'd held one of our guns in their hands and quickly got it shot off, I had to make them less volatile and more obedient. A small tweak in the algorithms, a little downgrade in their efficiency, just to keep them from turning into those unpredictable disaster zones that could get me killed. But even with all the upgrades and fixes, I can't shake the feeling that I'm still missing something. That there's something more I can do to push this planet to the next level. More weapons, more firepower. If I could just scale things faster, maybe I could corner a bigger piece of the market, something bigger than just the basic guns and blasters. I need something unique, something that'll separate me from the competition. Maybe specialized weapons, things you can't get anywhere else. I turn away from the balcony and head into my command center, tapping into the meseeks control system. They're all running flawlessly now. Sure, there's some occasional mishap, one meseek's getting a little too zealous with testing a flamethrower or another blowing up a mini workshop, but nothing I can't handle. It's all about keeping them on task. Meseeks are the perfect workforce, but they can't think ahead. They're simple tools, but I'm the one pulling the strings. Meseeks, continue with production line 14, ensure all units are calibrated to code red parameters. I issue my command, the words sharp and deliberate. I can't afford a single misstep. I pause, a thought creeping into my head. Rick, he just wouldn't leave my mind. But the thought process wasn't merely about him but the events that happened throughout the Citadel. I looked down at my collar almost curiously. Looking back on it, I still can't fully explain what happened that day. It's like everything clicked into place in a way I never expected. The Forge, it changed me. I didn't even know it at the time, but during the chase against the Citadel, dodging those lasers hadn't been a mere coincidence, and delving deeper there was no chance I could have found the collar without some sort of link to it. The more I've been thinking about it, the more I realize Rick's probably got some idea of what's going on. Ever since the evil Rick incident, he's been giving me that side eye, watching me like I'm some kind of ticking time bomb. It's been making me uneasy. He doesn't know the full story, doesn't know the caller's real power, the way it's changing me, but there's always that inkling in the back of my mind. It's only a matter of time before he figures it out. If I'm being honest, part of me wants him to figure it out just to see the look on his face when he realizes I've taken control of my destiny, but that was the Morty part of me talking. The other part of me knows how dangerous it would be to have him breathing down my neck while I'm trying to expand Morty arms. Maybe it's time to do something about that. Before I can dwell on it too long, I hear a beeping sound coming from my terminal. A new message, Rick C-137 sending a transmission. You've got some explaining to do, kid. My stomach twists. It's exactly what I was afraid of. The last thing I need is Rick breathing down my neck, poking around my empire. But it's not just about the business. It's about the caller. My intellect. He's definitely noticed the changes, and as much as I try to hide it, he's been putting the pieces together. I suppress a sigh. This isn't good. I've gotta act fast. There's no room for mistakes. Not now. I rush to the communications panel and hit the button. The screen flickers and then reveals Rick's face, looking annoyingly smug as usual. He couldn't see what was going around me, just my face, and that was it. Morty, he says, his voice sharp, we need to talk. About everything. I try to stay calm. What's there to talk about, Rick? I said with a almost a straight smile. Rick raises an eyebrow. Yeah, well, it's about your name. Why does the entire galactic black market suddenly know your name? Morty, you've been making moves, and I don't like the direction this is heading. I could feel the pressure mounting. If I didn't play my cards right, everything I've built could come crashing down. The caller's effects are only getting stronger, and I don't think Rick's ever going to let me live this down. I narrow my eyes. I'm just doing what I've gotta do, Rick. You know how it is. Not everyone gets to sit around in their garage all day and tinker with useless inventions. Rick's eyes flicker with something, suspicion, maybe. But I can't let him get to me. Not now. I lean in closer, my voice low and firm. If you think I'm gonna stop because you're paranoid about me getting smarter, you're wrong. It's nothing too serious anyways. Rick stares at me for a long moment, but then, in typical Rick fashion, he shrugs. Fine, Morty. Keep playing your little games. But remember, I'm watching. And one of these days, you're gonna regret thinking you can outsmart me. I can feel my heart pounding, but I hold my ground. I'll be waiting for that day, Rick. As the transmission cuts off, I breathe a sigh of relief. But even with that win, something nags at me. I know I'm on borrowed time. Rick's watching, and he's not going to stop until he figures out what I'm really up to. But for now, I'm in control. And I'm not going to let him or anyone else take that from me. The breakfast table was a war zone, and I was stuck right in the center of it all. The clinking of forks against plates and the occasional slurp of coffee were the only sounds breaking the suffocating silence. Rick sat at his usual spot, hunched over a plate of half-eaten eggs, his eyes glued to some handheld device that kept beeping erratically. I poked at my scrambled eggs, my collar gleaming faintly under the kitchen light. The tension between us was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. It had been weeks since we'd had a real conversation. Both of us seemed to be attempting to guess one another's thoughts while keep at a safe distance, seemingly neither of us getting anywhere in the process. Beth put her coffee cup down, the sound loud than expected, jolting everyone at the table. Summer looked up from her phone. Jerry froze mid-bite of his toast, and even Rick's device let out a startled bleep. All right, Beth said, her voice sharp and unyielding. I don't know what's going on between you two, but it's been weeks. Weeks. And I'm done with it. Rick didn't look up. What are you talking about, Beth? Everything's fine. Morty and I are fine. Right, Morty. I glanced up briefly, my eyes darting between Rick and Beth. Yeah, we're fine. Totally fine. I said in a more monotone voice. Beth's eyes narrowed. Fine. You call this fine? You two haven't said more than 2 words to each other since you got back from whatever crazy adventure you were on. And don't think I haven't noticed the way you've been avoiding each other. It's like living with 2 brooding teenagers. Rick finally looked up, his expression a mix of annoyance and feigned innocence. Beth, come on. Morty and I are just giving each other space. That's all. Right, Morty. I nodded quickly, though my thoughts went other places. Yeah, space. We're just respecting each other's boundaries. Beth crossed her arms, her gaze shifting between the two of us. Boundaries. You two don't have boundaries. You're either blowing up planets or getting into some kind of intergalactic mess. And now you're acting like strangers. I don't buy it. Jerry, who had been quietly eating his toast, chimed in nervously. Maybe they just need some time to work things out, Beth. You know, like we did after the whole Pluto incident. Beth shot him a glare. This isn't about us, Jerry. This is about them. She turned back to Rick and me, her tone firm. I don't know what's going on between you two, but you're going to fix it. Today. Rick raised an eyebrow. Fix it. Fix what? There's nothing to fix. I nodded again, my voice never wavering. Yeah, nothing to fix, we're good. Beth's patience snapped. She stood up, slamming her hands on the table. That's it. You two are going out. Right now. Go on an adventure, or whatever it is you do. But you're not coming back until you've sorted this out. Rick leaned back in his chair, smirking. Oh, come on, Beth. You can't be serious. Beth's eyes blazed. Dead serious. Jerry and I are going grocery shopping, and when we get back, I expect you two to have worked through whatever this is. If not, don't bother coming home. Jerry's eyes widened. Wait, Beth, are you sure? Beth cut him off, grabbing her bag and his arm. We're leaving, now. I watched as a dragging Jerry and Beth walked out of the kitchen, the front door slamming shut behind them. The house fell into an awkward silence. Summer, who had been quietly observing the whole exchange, stood up and grabbed her purse. Good luck with that, she said, heading for the door. I'm out. And just like that, it was just Rick and me. The silence stretched on, my wrist feeling heavy and atmosphere uncomfortable. Rick finally broke it, his tone casual but laced with irritation. Well, Morty, looks like we've been banished. You happy? I frowned, my fingers tightening around my fork. Me. You're the one who's been avoiding me, Rick. Ever since we got back from the Citadel, you've been acting like I'm some kind of, I don't know, threat. Rick scoffed, standing up and heading to the fridge. A threat? Don't flatter yourself, Morty. I've just been busy. You know, saving the universe, inventing stuff, the usual. I stood up too, my frustration bubbling over. Busy. You've been avoiding me, Rick. And don't think I haven't noticed the way you've been looking at me. Like you're waiting for me to do something. Rick paused, a bottle of sauce in his hand. He turned to face me, his expression unreadable. And what exactly would you do, Morty? I hesitated. I don't know, Rick. But you're acting like I'm some kind of time bomb. Like you don't trust me. Rick's eyes narrowed. Trust you? Morty, you've been acting weird ever since you got that collar back. You've been sneaking around, keeping secrets. So yeah, maybe I don't trust you. Not until you tell me what's going on. I narrowed my eyes, leaning slightly on the table. Why should I trust you when you don't even trust me? I said, pausing briefly. Knowing you, Rick, I have good reason. Besides, I'm not the only one with secrets in this room. Rick's eyes lingered on me, his usual bravado flickering just enough for me to notice. I wasn't entirely sure if simply confronting the issue was the smartest move, but at the very least it'll clear the air. Rick didn't answer right away. Instead, running his empty hand through his hair. Fine then, but that doesn't change the fact you've been suspicious. What exactly is so suspicious? I've just grown and it seems to me you can't handle a Morty being a variable out of your control. Rick's expression darkened. Watch it, Morty. You don't know what you're talking about. Then tell me. I raised my tone, my voice echoing through the kitchen. Rick's grip tightened on the bottle in his hand. For a moment, it looked like he was about to say something. But then he turned away, muttering under his breath. You wouldn't understand. I threw my hand into my face in frustration. Of course I wouldn't. Because you won't tell me anything. Rick slammed the bottle down on the counter. Fine, Morty. You want to know the truth. The collar is dangerous. At first I just thought it was some weird fashion thing, but ever since the Citadel I noticed changes. It's more dangerous than you can imagine. And if you keep messing with it, you're going to get yourself, and maybe the rest of us, killed. I stared at him, my dissatisfaction giving way to slight confusion. What are you talking about, Rick? Rick hesitated. It's complicated, Morty. And I can't explain it right now. Just trust me when I say you need to be careful. I shook my head, my frustration returning. That's not good enough, Rick. If it's so dangerous, then why did you let me keep it? Why didn't you just take it away? Rick's jaw tightened. Because I thought I could handle it. But now, I'm not so sure. The room fell silent again, the weight of Rick's words hanging in the air. I looked down at the collar, my mind racing. He hadn't realized I had made it explicitly to get rid of my potential weaknesses. I didn't understand why Rick was so afraid of it, but I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't just let it go. It held too much value. Finally, Rick sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, Morty, we're not getting anywhere like this. Beth's right. We need to figure this out. So, what do you say we go on one of our classic adventures? Just you and me. No secrets, no lies. Just talk. I looked up, surprised at his sudden shift. Rick shrugged, though his expression was serious. Yeah, I mean it. But you've got to promise me one thing. What? No more secrets, Morty. Whatever's going on with that collar, you tell me. Deal. I contemplated for a second, then nodded. Deal. Rick grabbed his portal gun from the counter and tossed me a spare he got from the Citadel. All right, then, let's get out of here before Beth comes back and grounds us for life. I managed a small smile, though my mind was still racing. As Rick opened a portal, I couldn't shake the feeling that this adventure was going to change everything. And I was right. The sky above this scrapyard world was a swirling mess of rust-colored clouds, and the ground beneath me was a nightmare of jagged metal shards and half-functioning robots twitching in the heated, gas-filled dirt. It wasn't the worst place we had been in, but it was up there. Rick scanned the area ahead, his eyes sharp as ever. All right, Morty, the materials we need are dead ahead. Should be a quick grab and go, assuming we don't get jumped by the local junkyard thugs. I tightened my grip on my portal gun, already assessing the odds. Yeah, well, knowing our luck, Rick, I'd say there's a 99% chance we do get jumped. Rick scoffed, taking a swig from his flask. Oh, come on, Morty. What's life without a little danger? Keeps the blood pumping. Now stay sharp, we're not exactly sneaking into a bakery. We moved through the wreckage, stepping over piles of twisted scrap metal and dismantled android limbs. The distant buzzing of malfunctioning generators vibrated through the air, punctuated by the occasional explosion from deep within the scrapyard. The place reeked of burnt wires and ozone. Something didn't sit right with me. Our surrounds being completely devoid of life despite the environment is suspicion, and looking around it was as if things were already moved and looted. Rick, this feels like a setup. Rick smirked, already cutting into the rusted-out supply station with his laser tool. That's 'cause we're just that good, Morty. Now quit worrying and help me pry this panel open. I held up the metal while he worked, the smells of different metals filling my nostrils. Within moments, the sheet metal clattered open, revealing a stash of rare alloys and circuits. Jackpot, Rick muttered, stuffing his and my satchel with everything he could carry. Told you this would be a walk in the park, let's hurry and head back before your mother locks us out permanently. I was still wary of our surrounding. Hearing a creak, my eyes darted around the junk piles as I muttered, Rick, I think we've got company. Rick barely looked up. Right on schedule. Figures began emerging from the heaps of wreckage, scrap-covered thugs with makeshift weapons, their bodies reinforced with rusted cybernetic enhancements. But what really caught my attention were the sleek, glowing red lenses strapped to the sides of their heads, scanning us like we were data entries in some intergalactic hit list. The leader, a towering brute with a metal jaw, cracked his knuckles. You ain't from around here, are ya? Rick rolled his eyes. Oh, great, a territorial scrap gang. Look, buddy, we're just here for the parts. No need for the whole, tough guy, routine. The thug leader grinned, revealing jagged metal teeth. See, that's the problem. Everything in this yard, it belongs to us. And that means you're stealing. I groaned. Rick, can we just portal out of here? Rick waved me off. Nah, Morty, this is a prime opportunity to blow off some steam. Besides, we're not leaving empty-handed. The gang leader let out a mechanical growl, raising a spiked club. Wrong answer. The scrapyard erupted into chaos. Rick moved fast, pulling out his modified plasma gun and firing precise shots that melted weapons and fried circuits. I stayed sharp, using cover to my advantage and taking down opponents with well-placed portal shots. No need to use the collar against fodder. Besides, I couldn't be reckless as I used to be. Eerie move had to have a purpose. Rick ducked under a swinging pipe, countering with an explosive round that sent his attacker flying. You see that, Morty? That's what teamwork looks like. I fired over my shoulder, blocking a thug trying to flank us. Yeah, teamwork. Now less talking, more shooting. Despite the numbers against us, which were around 50-2, we were winning. Covering each other's blind spots, moving with an almost practiced ease, it was one of those rare times Rick and I actually worked in sync. As the last of the thugs fell back, Rick dusted off his coat. Alright, let's get out of here before more of them show up. I wiped my brow, nodding. Sounds good to me. Reaching into my bag, I pulled out Rick's freeze ray I'd brought with the rest of my tools in my satchel and held it out. Here, thought you might need this. Rick's expression shifted, his eyes narrowing slightly as he took the weapon. Since when do you carry my gear? I shrugged. I prepared for a worst-case scenario. You always say it's good to be prepared, right? Rick scoffed, holstering the freeze ray. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you just, never mind. For a second, I thought he was going to push the issue, but he let it drop. I rolled my eyes. Can we just go now? Before Rick could respond, a loud beeping sound echoed from the distance. I turned, eyes locking onto the gang leader and the few remaining thugs standing atop a scrap heap. The scanners on their heads whirred ominously, pulsing with a red glow as they locked onto us. Something about it clicked in my brain. This felt way too familiar. The way those devices lit up, the way they analyzed us. It was just like those scouters from Dragon Ball Z, only this time, they weren't reading power levels, they were reading us, every move, every potential weakness. Rick's face darkened. Ah, hell, Morty, those scanners aren't just for show. The gang leader grinned. Oh, you have no idea what you're dealing with. The beeping intensified as Rick reached for his portal gun. The beeping crescendoed into a piercing wail, and before I could react, Rick grabbed me by the collar, yanking me behind a pile of rusted plating just as a blast of crimson energy scorched the ground where we stood. Morty, move your ass. Rick barked, firing off a few plasma shots. They dissipated against an energy field surrounding the gang leader, the red glow intensifying with each shot absorbed. They're using adaptive tech, every hit just makes them harder to kill. Then let's portal out of here already. I shouted, unconsciously ducking as another energy bolt seared past me. Rick clenched his jaw, eyes darting between the attackers and me. But instead of pulling out his portal gun, his eyes locked onto something else, my wrist. More specifically, the collar. It pulsed faintly, its glow matching the red of the enemy scouters. Morty, what's going on with that thing? His voice was sharp, but not yet accusatory. I glanced down at the collar, frowning. What? The collar? I don't know, said slightly out of breath from running, watching as it glowed. Rick's face twisted in suspicion. Oh, yeah, 'cause it looks an awful lot like it's reacting to those scouters. And you wanna tell me why that is? I hesitated. I don't know, Rick, just focus on escaping. I shot back, my frustration rising. Yeah, because it wasn't syncing up with enemy tech like a damn hive mind. Bullshit. Rick snapped. I scoffed. Come on, Rick, I would know if I was compromised. You really think I'd be able to argue with you right now if I was? Rick's eyes narrowed. Would you? Maybe it's subtle. Maybe it's just nudging your instincts, making you think it's all you. You ever consider that? Oh, so now it's a crime to be competent. I said. Rick, listen to yourself. You think I planned ahead, got better at fighting, and started using my brain more because some random piece of tech is controlling me. You always tell me to be prepared. Well, here I am. You don't trust me because I actually started thinking like you. I don't trust whatever's got its hooks in you. Rick growled. Whether it's the collar or those scrap idiots, until I know for sure you're not being puppeteered, I'm not bringing you back to Earth." We both halted in our tracks. A deep silence passed between us, even as the scrapyard burned around us. I gripped the portal gun in my hand tighter. Then, without warning, Rick lunged. I barely dodged as he activated a suppression field, sending a shockwave through the air where I had just stood. My instincts took over. I fired a portal at the ground beneath me, dropping into another location behind cover. Rick wasn't playing around. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Morty," he shouted, his voice bouncing through the wreckage. I gritted my teeth, pressing my back against the charred remains of a tank. "Maybe because you're trying to take me out instead of the real enemy." I heard the unfamiliar whir of Rick's speed boots, and I barely managed to roll aside as he reappeared, firing off a burst from his plasma gun. The shot skimmed my arm, searing through the fabric of my jacket. I bit back a cry of pain. "You've got one shot to surrender, Morty," Rick barked, reloading. "Otherwise, I will force you. You're only proving my point by fighting back." I panted, gripping my arm. "I can't believe this. You really don't trust me. You'd rather fight me than listen." Rick hesitated just for a second. That was my opening. I shot a portal beneath his feet, sending him plummeting a few stories down into a pit of crushed droids. I knew it wouldn't hold him long, but I needed time. Without it I couldn't calibrate the portal gun to go further. I ran. Pain pulsed through my arm, but I pushed forward, dodging between flaming wreckage as the gang leader's forces closed in. Their scanners were still trained on me. They wanted me. Why? What the hell did they see in me that Rick couldn't? "Morty." Rick's voice rang out again, this time from above. I looked up just as he reappeared, his arm cannon glowing with raw energy. He wasn't hesitating anymore. I barely managed to portal away before his blast annihilated the ground where my legs stood. I reappeared on top of a scrap heap, trying to catch my breath. My mind was racing. Rick wasn't going to stop. If I didn't do something, he was going to kill me. I clenched my jaw, fingers hovering over my emergency beacon in my scorched satchel. I didn't want to do this. But I had no choice. I pressed the button. The sky above the scrapyard split open as one of my Morty Arms cargo ships broke through the clouds in record time, likely just completing a delivery, engines roaring. The gang members below scattered as the sheer force of its arrival sent waves of dust and debris flying. Rick landed in front of me, panting, his weapon still raised. "You planned this." I glared at him. "Like you said, Rick. I'm learning." For a moment, I thought he was going to finish me off anyway. Then, the gang leader roared something in a foreign tongue. Before either of us could react, his scanners flared one last time, and then, a massive energy beam lanced through the battlefield. Pain exploded in my side. No, my arm. Luckily the one without the collar. I held in my scream as my left arm was vaporized. The searing pain, unlike anything I had ever felt, made my mind more than I believed it could. The world blurred as I staggered back, barely staying conscious. Rick's eyes widened. "Morty." I forced myself to move. Blood poured from my shoulder as I stumbled toward the cargo ship's descending ramp. Rick reached out. "Morty, wait." I turned back, eyes bloodshot filled with hurt. "No, Rick. You figure out what the hell you just did." Then, before he could stop me, I stepped onto the ramp. The ship's doors closed between us, sealing me away from my grandfather. And for the first time, I left him behind. Blood. Blood was everywhere, streaked across the cold metal floor of the ship in erratic patterns. It dripped from my ruined arm, soaking into the fabric of my torn yellow shirt. My breaths came in ragged gasps, the edges of my vision flickering between clarity and a dark, creeping haze. I took slow, unsteady steps toward the cockpit, my shoes smearing the crimson trail behind me. My legs trembled, feeling the lack of fluid within me, but I forced myself forward, gritting my teeth against the agony radiating from my missing limb. Every second counted. Every drop of blood lost was a step closer to death. Upon seeing me, the Meeseeks guards stationed in the corridor reacted instantly, their red forms blurring as they rushed to my side. "Oh, geez. He's in bad shape." One of them, clearly born of the lesser box, yelped, quickly propping me up by my only remaining arm. Stop the bleeding, I rasped, barely able to get the command out. Right away. Another Meeseeks confirmed. They dragged me into the cockpit, laying me against the cold, uncushioned seat next to the control panel, laying my satchel on top as one of them hastily wrapped what remained of my arm with a pressurized medical bandage. Pain shot through me as the nanofibers latched onto my exposed flesh, but the bleeding slowed. I forced myself to focus, pushing the pain aside. Rick was still out there. And he would be coming. I groaned, shifting my weight as I forced myself upright. We need to cut Rick's tracking now. Yes, sir. A Meeseeks snapped to attention, darting toward the ship's interface. Attempting to jam external pings and mask ship signature. I gritted my teeth. It wouldn't be that simple. Rick wasn't just going to let me go. He'd have already thrown every scanner, tracker, and quantum pulse beacon he had at this ship. If I didn't move fast, he'd be ripping open another portal and yanking me back before I could even land. The ship's onboard AI flickered to life, its voice smooth and mechanical. Warning. Imminent planetary landing in 60 seconds. Atmospheric descent engaged. Destination, ascertaining location preparing for cargo departure. Bioscan indicates emergency medical treatment required. Perfect. I clenched my jaw, rolling my shoulder as the pain settled into a dull, unbearable throb. I needed to get patched up, and fast. Whatever planet we were dropping onto for trade, it was my one shot to gather material in a quick enough time. Get ready to move, I ordered the Meeseeks. We don't know what's down there, but we're landing whether we like it or not. Gear up. The Meeseeks already at attention, quickly fetching weapons and equipment from the storage compartments. One of them approached me, holding out a fresh set of gear, black, tactical, and reinforced with lightweight plating. Identical to the armor they were all already wearing. I exhaled, pushing down every emotion swirling inside of me. Rick thought I was compromised. Thought I was being controlled. He'd rather shoot me than believe that I was capable of thinking for myself. He made his choice. Now I was making mine. With steeled determination, I stripped off my blood-soaked shirt and pulled on the black tactical gear. As I zipped it up, sealing myself into the armor, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was going to thrive no matter the cost. Taking me out of my thoughts, the ship shuddered violently as it broke through the planet's atmosphere. The viewport flashed red-hot as we plummeted through layers of thick, swirling clouds. Turbulence rocked the cabin, sending loose debris tumbling across the floor. Brace for impact, the AI warned, its voice flat and emotionless. The Meeseeks planted their feet firmly onto whatever they could. I grabbed the edge of the control panel, gritting my teeth as the ship shifted back and forth, the artificial gravity struggling to keep up. Alarms blared signaling the severe turbulence and sparks flew from circuits. The cockpit dimmed, emergency lighting casting eerie shadows across the vibrating floor. Then, with a deafening crashing noise, we hit the surface. The impact threw me forward, my body slamming into the console before I tumbled to the floor. Pain exploded across my ribs, but I forced myself to stay up, groaning. Oh, that was rough. I pushed myself up, wincing. Sound off. Who's still functional? I asked the lesser Meeseeks. Here. One called, on the ground. Still alive. Same here, sir. Another answered, helping one of their own to their feet. I exhaled, trying to ignore the searing pain in my side. Good. Get the hatch open. We need to move before Rick finds us. The Meeseeks scrambled to comply, opened the slightly jammed exit ramp manually with a button on the side of the frame. The heavy metal groaned before finally giving way, revealing the outside world. Conscious. The ship groaned, metal protesting as it settled into the soft planet. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then a Meeseeks, clearly the caption of the ship, came to view. "We are ready, sir, give us your orders," he said, standing firm, blaster in hand. I stepped forward, taking my first shaky breath of the planet's thick, humid air. The landscape stretched before us, vast and unfamiliar. I turned to the Meeseeks captain, my grip tightening on the blaster at my side. "We need supplies and medical aid. Sweep the area, but keep it quiet. Rick could already be on our tail." The Meeseeks saluted in unison. "Yes, sir." They moved with precision, marching onto the planet like well-trained soldiers. For the first time since my escape, I allowed myself a moment to breathe. The pain was still there, the loss still fresh, but so was the undeniable truth: I had made it. I had broken free in a way. Now, I just had to figure out how to live with it. I adjusted my gear, casting one last glance at the damaged ship behind me before stepping forward into the unknown.